The courtroom buzzed with an electric mix of whispers and anticipation that Tuesday morning, the kind of low hum that fills a room when everyone senses that something big is about to happen. I could feel Karen Whitfield's smug confidence radiating across the aisle like a cloud of cheap perfume. She sat rigid and proud in a tailored power suit, hair sprayed into place so tightly it looked bulletproof, lips curled into that self-satisfied smirk I had grown to despise. She leaned close to her attorney, whispering as though the verdict had already been decided in her favor. Her posture screamed superiority. The ever-righteous HOA president poised to put the stubborn ranch owner in his place. Or so she thought, right up until Judge Morrison called the room to order and asked me if I had legal representation. I rose slowly, straightening my tie with deliberate calm. "Your Honor," I said evenly, "I'll be representing myself." A ripple of surprise swept across the courtroom. Karen's young lawyer, a fresh-faced, overly confident fellow named Bradley Cooper, let out a tiny smirk as if he'd been given a gift. Poor kid didn't realize the storm he'd just invited onto himself. "Very well," Judge Morrison replied, one brow arching. "Please state your qualifications for the record." I cleared my throat. "Thomas Mitchell, retired attorney. 35 years with Mitchell and Associates, specializing in property law and civil litigation. Member of the State Bar since 1987. Cooper's smirk evaporated. Karen's jaw dropped before she snapped it shut again, her face tightening like she had tasted something sour. I almost felt sorry for her, though not enough to soften what was coming. Life out on Cedar Ridge Ranch was supposed to be peaceful. After decades of courtroom battles and corporate showdowns, I had bought that 100-acre spread precisely for its solitude. No neighbors for miles, no HOA breathing down my neck, no one telling me what color my barn should be or what time my porch lights must turn off. Just me, my horses, and occasional weekend visits from my grandkids. The ranch had been owned by the Henderson family for 3 generations before I purchased it, and old Jim Henderson had been crystal clear when we signed the papers. His land had never been part of any homeowners association. The nearest subdivision, Willowbrook Estates, was 2 miles away and separated from the ranch by a swath of county land and a solid property line. For the first year, everything was perfect. Quiet mornings, wide open skies, and not a single neighbor complaining about anything I did. Then Karen Whitfield got herself elected HOA president, and peace became a luxury I couldn't afford. Our first encounter occurred on a crisp October morning. I was repairing a section of fence when a white Lexus SUV rolled up to my gate. Out stepped a woman in her 50s, hair immaculately highlighted, clipboard clasped like a weapon. She strutted toward the gate with the confident irritation of someone who expected the world to obey. "Excuse me," she called out in a clipped, commanding tone. "I need to speak with you about community trail access." I set down my hammer, wiped my hands on my jeans, and approached the gate, keeping it firmly between us. "Can I help you?" "I'm Karen Whitfield," she declared, with the air of announcing royalty, "president of the Willowbrook Estates, HOA. I waited for that to mean something to me. It didn't. "We're implementing a new community trail system," she continued, tapping her clipboard as though delivering divine orders. "We need to establish an easement through your property to connect to the county hiking paths." I almost laughed. "Ma'am, this is private property. It's not part of your HOA." Her smile tightened. "That's what we need to discuss. The community believes interconnected trails will benefit everyone, increase property values, and promote healthy living." "That's lovely for your community," I said calmly. "But this ranch isn't part of Willowbrook Estates." She tapped her clipboard again, harder this time. "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think you understand how these things work. When a community decides something is for the greater good, individual holdouts can't just block progress." That was when I knew she would be trouble. "Ma'am," I replied, keeping my voice steady, "I understand perfectly. The answer is no. Have a nice day." I turned back to my fence while she huffed and climbed back into her Lexus, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the gravel beneath her tires. The next 6 months turned into a slow-motion siege. First came the letters, printed on official HOA letterhead, demanding I attend board meetings I had no obligation to attend. Then came the county complaints. Supposed code violations, noise complaints, improper fencing issues, all nonsense. Inspectors came and went, rolling their eyes after each visit. Karen even organized community walks where residents gathered at my property line to gawk and take photos like tourists. Observing a dangerous animal behind glass, the breaking point arrived in April. I drove to my back gate and found the padlock cut clean through, tire tracks carved fresh paths deep into my property. Someone had hammered bright orange trail markers into my trees along my private road. I tore every marker out and installed new security cameras. That night, the footage told me everything I needed. At 2 a.m., there was Karen Whitfield herself, wearing a tracksuit, bolt cutters in hand, marching up to my gate with 2 HOA board members. They cut my lock, drove inside, and planted trail markers like they were surveying land they owned. The next morning, I hired a welding crew to install a reinforced steel gate with concrete posts. Then I had my attorney send Karen and her entire board a formal cease and desist letter. She responded by suing me. The lawsuit was hand-delivered by a process server who seemed embarrassed. Karen and the HOA accused me of malicious obstruction, interference with established easements, and, my personal favorite, creating a public nuisance. They demanded immediate access, $50,000 in damages, and reimbursement for legal fees. I read through the complaint twice, wondering whether to laugh or pour myself a drink. The claims were absurd: historical use, implied easements, fabricated maps, suggesting my ranch had once been part of Willowbrook Estates, but they had officially kicked the hornet's nest. After retiring, I'd kept my bar membership active, mostly out of habit. Now it came in handy. I filed my response, denied every claim, and countersued for trespassing, harassment, and defamation. And that was how we ended up in that crowded courtroom on Tuesday morning. Karen strutted and flanked by her entourage, her attorney, 2 board members, and someone scribbling notes for the neighborhood newsletter. She even wore a tiny HOA president lapel pin, as if it held legal authority. Judge Morrison, a no-nonsense woman I had appeared before many times during my career, took her seat. When I recited my credentials, recognition flickered across her face. "Mr. Mitchell," she said with a faint nod. "Welcome back." Karen's lawyer launched into his opening statement with theatrical enthusiasm. He painted me as a recluse, selfishly blocking innocent families from nature. According to him, the trails had existed for decades, and I had single-handedly held the community hostage. When it was my turn, I stayed calm and direct. I presented the original deed from 1952, the 2021 survey, and sworn affidavits from 3 previous owners, covering more than 60 years. No easement had ever existed. My property had never belonged to an HOA. No public access had ever been granted. Then I produced the security footage. Karen trespassing on my land at least 6 times, cutting locks, driving past gates, planting unauthorized markers. I provided 17 harassing letters, 9 records of false county complaints, and documentation of her smear campaign. Judge Morrison examined the photos, one by one. "Miss Whitfield," she said, holding up a still image, "is this you?" Karen's color shifted from pink to deep purple. "That's taken out of context," she sputtered. "So you admit it's you?" The judge pressed. Her lawyer leaped up. "Your Honor, my client acted in good faith," I interrupted calmly. "Your Honor, I have an audio recording as well." Karen stiffened. I handed over a flash drive. In her own words, I continued, Miss Whitfield stated, "I don't care if he owns it. I'll make his life hell until he gives in." The courtroom fell silent. "That was a private conversation," Karen shrieked. "Recorded from my property," I replied. Your voice carried over my fence. "Single-party consent state." It was over. Her lawyer scrambled for evidence, but had none. Judge Morrison dismissed their claims with prejudice. She granted my countersuit in full, $15,000 in damages, $5,000 in legal fees, and a permanent restraining order requiring Karen and all HOA members to stay at least 500 feet away from my property. But Judge Morrison wasn't finished. She announced she was forwarding the case to the district attorney for possible criminal trespass charges and sending a copy of her ruling to the HOA with a recommendation to review their leadership. Karen's face collapsed. Her board members glared at her like wolves, discovering their leader was made of paper. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. Karen Whitfield had been unanimously removed from her position and permanently banned from holding any HOA leadership role. The district attorney moved forward with the case. 2 months later, Karen pleaded guilty to misdemeanor trespass, earning probation and 500 hours of community service, explicitly prohibited from any HOA involvement. 6 months after that, I received an invitation from the state law school to serve as keynote speaker for a continuing education series. My topic: When Karen Attacks a Case Study in HOA Overreach. The lecture went viral. Karen's legacy became a cautionary tale in property law classes. Word eventually reached me that she sold her home at a loss and moved out of state. The new HOA board sent a formal apology and a fruit basket. As for the $20,000 she paid me, I donated every penny to a legal aid foundation that helps homeowners fight abusive HOAs. They named their new conference room the Whitfield Warning Room. The irony was perfect. The last I heard, Karen was working as a receptionist at a small real estate office 3 states away. Her dreams of power buried beneath the weight of court orders, criminal charges, and the kind of defeat that echoes across years. And out at Cedar Ridge Ranch, the mornings are peaceful again, open, and blissfully free of Karen Whitfield.